like and subscribe. Okay, guys, welcome to your Preservation Fund training session. I'm your trainer, as you all know, Tim. We did our previous training session together as well. And before we get into actual meat and bones of the Pres Fund content, I'll start off with a very quick icebreaker. We then go into just understanding like what your hopes and your fears are about the content that's going to be coming up, from what you might have heard on the floor, what you might have even seen in your cases, and then a fun little game that I love playing with my learners. So, if you were to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? It's not your last meal, don't go like death row vibes. It's your, if you only eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
The answer is going to be avocado. I don't like avocado, but it is very nutritious. Contains very healthy fats, proteins, stuff.
Are you saying a meal or just one thing?
A meal.
I could have different types of pasta.
Okay, I'll accept pasta as a broad spectrum.
Different types, you know. Yeah. Really, then has chili sometimes. And yeah, it's.
I'm glad you're adding chili because pasta without, anything without chili is just boring.
Yeah, like chili, sometimes
fine.
plain.
So, what is yours?
Ribs.
Great.
You, I
Ribs.
Ribs. Oh, nice.
I regret my choice.
Would that be like beef ribs or pork ribs or what? Pork ribs. How do you prefer? Like, do you like the sticky ribs or
Sticky, very sticky,
barbecue?
saucy, just, yeah,
Ribs.
that's because it is.
Because you wanna change your answer.
Yes, we do.
Abalone toast. I will give you abalone toast.
Like, why would you just eat everyone alone?
No, I thought this was a question about what meal would be best for you, but if we can choose ribs, I'm not here for a
It
long
is a
time, I'm here
meal.
for a good time.
So you also gonna go with ribs.
I think I'll go with pork rashes.
Nice. The ones from Wards are really nice.
At this. And I'm just kidding.
Well, lunch, we will discuss lunch
How does
just
that
now.
link with finance?
I mean, you have to
Buy
pay
the
attention to
food.
work hard, get a good bonus, so you can afford to buy the Wards that. Because this video, the checkers ones are a bit, yeah. I think for me, it would be burgers with the side of veggies. You get your protein in the patty, your carbs in the...
Veggies.
Yeah, your protein in your patty, carbs from your bun,
You're the lettuce
The
in the
sauce is
burger
just
is enough
sauce.
as veggies.
and then your fiber and nutrition from your actual veggies.
Mm.
Alright guys, next thing we're going to move on to hopes and fears about both the training and come up. You can choose one color each and just write one hope and one fear about the course, and I hope that I'll be able to maybe make you feel better about it. So I'll actually start with black. My hope will be to make my consultants feel more confident about the course itself. And my fear is much like last time, we don't find enough work.
That was mine.
I can
Oh.
imagine quite big implications.
Yeah. But if last time anything to go by, it's only Pres Fund section 14 in the queue. So hopefully it stays like that when you find Pres Funds that give you guys proper work. But yeah, I mean, if you'd like to come up, and he's right, I'll keep that then. One hope and one fear. Then yeah.
And, What is
all types, all variations.
Say you need to, I mean, you obviously have to capture your app form instruction, and then you've got your form H instruction, your tax directive, you've got your form J. How would I put that up here? We need to capture all
Aspects,
uh,
all components.
components. Yeah. Dog. What was that one?
Intellectual darkness, I like it. Very profound, very abstract.
I fear I. Here I might get confused with the comp transfer.
So like confusing comp with section 14 or like
Comp
does-
with praise.
Okay.
So the both have to do with the praise funds, just the pack there in the product we're putting it into. Since I mean we've been working with RAs for quite a while.
Yeah.
There's some going to be investing in LAs. Praise funds.
So I think the nice thing is that like the documentation is quite similar. It's just like this few things to look out for, but yeah, I think it's quite it shouldn't be that easy to get confused with the two, but you'll see how it will go. Okay, to get simple, straightforward cases to practice. Nice.
I just have my fear. I forgot.
I think we can come back to it.
Yeah. Some space.
You know? Which one do I think? Orange. Yeah.
We've done a lot of nice things.
Maybe if you had asked you to type up your hopes and fears a little bit. So you guys worked with nice, so that's the confidence aspect of it. I like that.
I am afraid of that. I'm afraid of getting praise fund cases while I'm at home during holiday.
Ah. I will be working during the holidays, so if you're hitting me up with the teams, we can help maybe share screen and see what's going on.
Sean, what's the most sleep days you have?
I've been asked by people to take me for that,
Which that's it. I was gonna say. Yeah, I know you went to like a long
that was tax season time, 11 days. But I already have like 4 days before Thanksgiving. Okay, so hopes and fears. My hope was to make you all feel more confident about the work, and my fear that we don't find enough cases to give you guys to capture. Eckhart says he hopes that we can learn to capture all components of a request from start to finish. Okay, so the receiver's hope was to get simple, straightforward cases to practice, and Gino's hope was to be able to work on a case from home. Okay, and your fears, not finding enough work, getting confused between a press fund and a comp transfer, and I guess mixing up the processes between the products. So the nice thing about the fears is that without having gone into the work, it might seem daunting, but like once you go through it all, there are enough checks that you have to be going through to make sure that you aren't investing in one product. Everything down to like the app form itself, the different app form. So you guys, I'm not too concerned about this, but obviously like once you start going through the actual content itself, you guys will start to feel a lot more confident about that. Okay, and just to set up some agreements on how the next 2 days are going to be going. Just some nice things to discuss beforehand. What time? I know I have trained you guys before, and if you want to keep that same structure, we can do that. But for example, what time will you guys be happy taking lunch?
12 is still fine.
Yeah.
12 o'clock.
Yeah.
12 to 1. So 12 to 1 p.m. Okay, we will be taking breaks throughout. And these will be about 15 minutes each,
Yes.
in which you guys can walk around, get some water, ask me questions to recap things. It's totally up to you how you want to spend your breaks. You'll typically be, we'll start off taking our breaks after lunch. Just makes more sense that way. And yeah, I think you can all just agree to ask questions maybe. What other agreements would you like to sort of bind me to for the next 2 days?
We need to fill up our candy bowl.
Oh.
Yes, snacks.
Yes.
I'm notoriously bad at remembering snacks.
Yes, sir.
Eckhart talks
Actually,
about the
that's for you
snack
guys.
bar. He talks about the snack bar. But in that whole bar that you bring, he only takes 1 or 2.
I think it's the
I was
idea of
asking
adding
for
it.
my fellow colleagues.
Not me. I'm not that fellow. Mm-mm. I just want 1 or 2. It's Yeno that wants the whole bar.
But it is because I don't want to forget the snacks. Like I don't remember them now. But yeah. What else?
Don't worry, Sunny will eat whatever's left.
That's
Being offered, then you go and fetch them.
Okay. I'll go and see the snacks and then bring them to
Yeah.
due course. Cool. Well,
And do reconnaissance.
if there aren't any more agreements, that's perfectly fine. I think this is sort of covers our general training agreements. So if you want to add anything else, let me know, and we can revisit it. Before we get into the content, I'm quite happy with the time, even though we just started a little bit late. Good type of brain teasers. I do consider myself above average when it comes to these. Do you guys know how these work?
No. All I know is the Gatsby is that you eat, and then there's like breaking promise.
Okay, so yeah, you guys got it. So it's basically like a visual representation of the common phrase, word, movie, pop culture reference or something. And you must decipher like what I've written and tell me what it actually is. So over here is the word promise with a little break in between, and the answer to this is actually broken promise. So
See?
well done, Sunil.
Like, at least I got 1. Now I can be out of the woods.
And that's great Gatsby up there on the left.
Yep, it's the word cat written very grandly, so it's
Oh.
great.
So it's not the Gatsby we eat. But that would be nice as well.
The content of the field. Okay, so we have 2 more, this and this.
Dr. Dolittle.
Dr.
possibly.
Dolittle, nice.
What's that?
It's a movie about this doctor that is actually a vet.
Oh.
And then
Who could talk to animals.
he can talk to animals.
Oh.
Eddie Murphy acted into it. Some other people who are fake animals.
And
So,
then
yeah.
that one? I can just say lion, dog, minions.
I wish I could say that you were
Millennials.
close. No.
Me? I don't know.
So what words are you seeing when you look at the what's your boy?
It's lone, lion,
One. Now.
Okay.
Afrikaans. On.
Is it me or my?
What? Where were you looking?
Milo? Is it? Or is
Oh,
it?
it's MILONELION.
Million.
Close.
Oh,
How is it million written?
1 million.
Closer.
Wow.
Look at how the 2 words are presented.
millionaire. Okay, 1 million. Okay.
Where's the 1?
$500,000.
Oh, okay, he's right.
No, he's not.
Isn't that right?
Right.
No, 1
1
million.
million.
So the word, so it's 1 and million, but where's the 1 million?
In the middle.
Yeah, so.
Million one.
Million and one.
Keys are doing this one.
Okay, 1 million. Million. One.
1 in a million.
There we go. The one's
Oh!
God is good at these things actually.
Yes, he is. Because even with Mike, the first time we played was in market functional, and I did not know what on earth was going on. I was just there looking. And if I got broken promises,
You did. And
By
you even,
mistake.
yeah, that was just you. With a short anecdote video explaining what a preservation fund actually is, and we'll just pull out the information part over here, and then go into how Alipay actually deals with preservation funds from a capturing and servicing point of view. Okay, so audio is not that great. I can't make it any louder. If you have any questions, you can just ask me afterwards, and then we'll get.
If you have accumulated retirement savings in an employer's retirement fund, when you leave the fund, transferring into a preservation fund allows you to preserve and grow your benefits until you retire, without losing the tax benefits you enjoyed within your original fund. The investment return you earn within a preservation fund is also not taxed. You may only invest in this
Are
fund.
you guys happy with that? Did you hear what was going on?
I think so.
sort of.
Okay, so I'll be primarily using the material available on the actual new e-learning course. Starting with this quick PowerPoint presentation over here. Bring it on my side. You're more than welcome to go through the course again on your. Can anyone here tell me what a pension preservation fund or a property preservation fund is? Just any guesses?
It is a fund where you transfer monies gained during which were received as contributions towards your retirement, and they were received during a time while you were employed at a specific company. But now that you do not work there anymore, for whatever reason, those monies can still be invested in the same funds, and you can still move this, and you can still have that money in your name, but you can't be in the company's investment pool. So you move that out to a preservation fund, and then the pension and provident aspect refers to how many withdrawals you can have before retirement. Is that? No, I think I got that last bit wrong.
Not exactly. Everything else was quite spot on. Yeah, so pension funds and property funds are very similar in how they work. They both are, as Eka correctly says, funds that you invest in while you are employed at a specific company. So I think functionally speaking, the only difference between a pension and a provident fund is that when it comes to a pension fund, it's both you and the employer contributing towards the retirement savings, whereas when it comes to a provident fund, that must isn't the mandatory thing anymore. So typically with the provident funds, it's sort of when your employers contribute towards your retirement savings as like a percentage based on what you are earning, so a part of your salary goes towards it, but then you as an employer can contribute on top of that if you wish to do so, but it's not a mandatory thing where it's both you and your employer contributing towards your pension fund. Yeah. Perhaps I should just put this up on the big screen for you to see it. So yeah, both are retirement vehicles. Just one has both you and the employer contributing towards it. The other is your employer and you can chip in if you want.
So, the pension fund, both of us must contribute. The employer and employee must contribute together to the pension fund. And then for the provident fund, it can be both of us, but it can also just be me alone.
Your employer, no. So it can be both, but it's your employer primarily doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But okay, and then that video that we watched where it says that the okay, I need to understand. So the preservation fund
Yeah.
it's an umbrella for the provident and pension funds.
So a preservation fund is sort of when you, so say if you were to work at, let's say, Liberty, right? Or Allen Gray is a good
Yes,
example.
the umbrella one.
Yeah, so maybe let's forget the umbrella part now, get into the between that now. But you're working at a company, and in that company they say, okay, cool, you're going to contribute towards your retirement in the, let's say, the Liberty Provident Fund. I'll just give it like some arbitrary name.
Mm-hmm.
How that works is while you're working at Liberty, Liberty will take a part of your salary, I guess before they pay you out and pay towards that Provident Fund.
Yes.
Yeah. Once you resign from Liberty or you're retrenched or whatever the case may be, you're no longer working at Liberty, you're no longer part of that fund. What you can do then is you can transfer that money from Liberty to, let's say, Allen Gray, but now you can't keep it in an Allen Gray preservation provident fund.
Yeah.
It goes into a preservation fund. So we sort of preserve the money that you invested while you were at Liberty, while giving the same tax benefits and the vested and unvested benefits, but you aren't able to sort of like contribute more to it because you're no longer working at that company. So like a preservation fund preserves your pension or provident benefits, where you can no longer sort of add to it because you're no longer working for like that parent company that allowed you to contribute to the first place.
So the pension and the provident is actually the baseline of it, and then after that, the preservation fund is when there's been changes and whatever, and we are just taking those funds and preserving them.
Exactly. What time is this? Yeah.
I get it now. Thank you.
And we'll get into theory a bit later, but it goes to the point, it's so much preservation of those specific monies that if you work at Liberty, no longer work, then you transfer your Liberty pension fund to Allen Gray pension preservation fund, and unless you work at like MWeb for 5 years, and you no longer work, then you can't add those MWeb to
Okay.
the same fund because you aren't preserving the same funds basically. Okay, so the preservation fund is literally just to preserve.
So what can go into a preservation fund?
It's basically when your source fund type is the same, you can add to it. So if you work in Nedbank, go somewhere else, come back to Nedbank, like it's that kind of situation. But we will unpack that in more detail later on. So what is a preservation fund? It's a retirement fund that's governed by the Pension Fund Act. It's a tax-effective investment vehicle for individuals who wish to preserve the proceeds of their company-sponsored retirement fund once they no longer are employed at that specific company. Okay. So, much like with the retirement annuities, just because you've nominated beneficiaries under Section 6, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be paying them out. It is governed by the Pension Fund Act, which means that we look at dependents over nominees. It's just that whatever we have on the form and linked to the account is who we start off when the trustees are doing the investigations. And once again, because you are contributing towards retirement, just because on a retirement fund, you do still get that tax benefit of having contributed towards the retirement fund. Okay, I'm sure you guys would remember seeing Section 37A, B, C, and D. This is a quick recap. Section 37A states that there's no seeding, no loans, and limited withdrawals on preservation funds. So this is sort of where the withdrawal part comes into effect. You'd remember that with retirement annuities, once your monies are invested, provided it's not below 15,000 Rand, you can't actually have a withdrawal on a retirement annuity. With a preservation fund, you can. There are certain situations in which it's possible, and we will unpack that later on. But Section 37A makes provisions for a client making a specific withdrawal on a preservation fund at a specific time. But still no seeding and no loans. You aren't able to hand over rights to your preservation fund to someone else and you aren't able to use your preservation fund or pension fund really as surety when taking out a loan. Section 37B states that no creditors are allowed to come after your retirement savings. Just because you are in great debt, they aren't allowed to now start exacting their debt from your retirement savings. Section 37C, dependents before beneficiaries. As I said earlier, just because you nominated someone on the application form doesn't necessarily mean that we will be paying them out upon your demise. It's quite funny because if you, as a person, are having an affair on your spouse is well off, the person you're cheating with is very much dependent on you. If we find out about them, we could very well end up paying them. It sucks, but it is part of legislation, dependence over nominees. Everything's a work trip. Please don't do that, guys. And then section 37D is the fund may make certain deductions from retirement funds if you are caught, having committed crimes at the company or stealing, breaking stuff. You're actually able to go ahead and recover the monetary value of the stuff that you've done from your retirement fund at that company. Any questions on this?
So when they say the fund may make deductions, does that mean because the pension or the provident fund was linked to the company you're working for? Does that mean that the fund only makes deductions for stuff which happened at the workplace, or does that also involve external stuff like damage to state property or whatever?
It's the fund itself making the deduction. So if you are having gain, you are chronically breaking laptops for fun, and they find out about it, then they can very well go and say, okay, the value for these laptops is damaged, you stole them, whatever the case may be, is 50,000 rand, and they can actually go ahead and pull that from you.
Do you get taxed on the company?
But initial fees, if you're doing a section 14 for an RA, section 14.8 as clean work, IFRS says I want 1% initial fees, you tell them no. We don't do initial fees on retirement annuities. But for a section 14.8 transfer, transfer for a preservation fund, IFRS can take initial fees on those. And I actually found out this morning, from a legislation point of view, legislation makes provisions for, it specifies that RAs are the ones that will carry the actual prohibition on initial fees. The legislation doesn't outline pension or provident funds that are transferred over, which is why I did different.
It seems like a well-designed way to punish clients who want a bit of access to their money, because on the pension and the provident funds you do get limited withdrawals, whereas on the RAs you get none. So they give you the initial, they give the consumer the advantage of not having to pay those initial fees of transferring to an RA. So, smart bastards.
And always remember that, like, when it comes to harmonization, the reason you can't put an RA into another lesser fund is because RAs are the strictest and the most regulated. So when you can put the others into an RA, because you can just make it look at there is net results, the mines are more regulated, more strict. So even with regards to withdrawals, the ultimate reasoning behind why clients aren't allowed to take withdrawals from their RA is simply because it puts them in a worse position in retirement. They'll have less to retire from, and then they start taking state grants and become a burden onto the state. So I guess that could also get tied into why RAs can't have initial fees, whereas its funds kind of can. Yeah. It's quite brutal wording, but I guess you retire at, let's say, 60 and you live to 80, 20 years, you have to make the salary work for you. And if you start withdrawing maybe 30 and you want to buy a nice new car, that's all money you don't have when you retire.
I suppose it's a form of a liquidity premium actually, because
yeah. But then again, 2 parts coming, so we'll see how that factors into it.
it sounds like September.
224, yeah. Thanks, Mark. You can stick it quickly for the next part. It's ultimately raised. So, African rule of a fun quiz for us. Definition of fun varies. who can tell me what the main difference between a provident fund is when compared to a pension fund?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So it should be provident versus pension fund.
I was going to say maybe this was a trick question, but
Well, that question does also still stand. Maybe you can answer that.
Yeah.
so a pension fund requires mandatory contribution by both the employer and the employee,
Okay, yeah.
and a provident fund must contain contribution from the employer and may contain contribution from the employee, not mandatory.
And can you tell me a bit more for the provident fund of where the employer will contribute from and how the contribution is made?
Contribution is made as a percentage of the client's salary.
There we go. I'm just going to write there mandatory employer and then optional employee. So I see you made an interesting comment earlier about umbrella funds, and it's not on the page over here, but I actually want to see if we can unpack the difference between an umbrella fund and a provident fund. That's one of the questions I actually had for Mike. It's actually quite interesting. Okay, yeah, so following on, in light of this and my tactical spelling mistake over here.
That's far beyond spelling, Graham. That's far beyond spelling.
I mean, it's like 4 letters different. Okay, so what then is a preservation fund?
It's coming from the company which essentially was added from into the preservation fund like AG or whatever.
Correct. But why would you put it in a preservation fund?
So, the reason why I would call it preservation funds, it's because you are essentially just preserving the funds. You can't make any additional contributions to it. You can't make any additions or changes to it. You are just taking it from your previous employer and you are just keeping it, you are preserving it as is. And just letting the market take place.
Cool. I'm going to combine your answers because you've got an important points. You said it's come from another employer, you've got another company, and then you create safety it's with the intention of preserving the monies as well as the rights that came with it from the other fund.
Oh.
And then you let the market do its thing.
Yeah, I was going to say like the rights that's the preservation fund, the rules of the fund that you are at carry over to a preservation fund. So the preservation fund is literally just a reaction which takes what it needs to be.
It's the 2-liter ice cream box that you put in the freezer.
Yeah. It's empty. It will, it's just empty. You just need to keep it. If you keep the ice cream, it will be kept. If you keep leftovers, it will be kept. It's like that now. It follows the rules of whatever the content of it.
But the leftovers are made in the pot, not the ice cream container. Really.
See?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good analogy.
Yes.
Alright. So, let's see where. Provident funds is mandatory for the employer to contribute towards it as a percentage of their salary, and the employee is optional, right? So doesn't it kind of sound like our umbrella funds?
Which one, the provident fund? Yes.
So why would you say that we have an umbrella fund and not an provident fund investment?
Why would I say what?
So like, could you maybe give me a difference between a provident fund and an umbrella fund?
I actually don't know, but I will classify it.
Okay, anyone else want to chip in?
An umbrella fund is a combination of both.
Combination of?
a pension and I don't know.
Okay, Eckhart?
I'm going to say the umbrella fund doesn't have a mandatory contribution from the employer, but it gives the employee the option to contribute more.
Okay, I like the guesses. You are all on a good track. So it's kind of a weird one because, in a way, not all provident funds are umbrella funds, but all umbrella funds are provident funds. The difference is, if you have a company, let's say, like a small accounting firm with like 100 employees, right? And that company wants to do sort of like a contribution towards all their employees' retirement savings, right? It will technically fall under provident fund because they're going to be contributing as part of the salary, but they don't have their own sort of in-house provident funds. So they're going to sort of outsource that to a company like Allen Gray or Liberty, A firms you see a lot of. And in those cases, the reason won't you have something like an umbrella fund is because an umbrella fund, much like an umbrella shape, it covers a lot of things. So you have multiple different companies with a similar investment goal, choosing one specific asset manager to invest all their employees' monies in, and that will fall under an umbrella fund. So it's a collective of companies that are too small to have their own dedicated fund, investing with the benefits of having its own dedicated fund. Whereas if you look at Toyota might have a Toyota Provident Fund because Toyota might have 100,000 employees in South Africa, and they're sort of big enough to have the Toyota Provident Fund administered by Alexander Forbes, for example. So an umbrella fund effectively allows smaller companies to get into the game of having their employees' funds managed by a larger asset manager without having like an own dedicated fund, if that makes any sense.
And AGU, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
This is important.
It's, yeah, I
The abbreviations, I feel like there's such a lot of accounts. So once you start getting to computerize, it's such a
But the good thing is that you guys don't deal with umbrella funds. This is just more of like a knowledge piece because in case you're wondering, okay, well, we do this over here, so why would we have a corporate fund? It's more like, yeah, it's just managed by Allen Gray as part of like the umbrella program. It's not necessarily a corporate fund, even though it technically kind of is.
So the umbrella fund is a provident, right?
It can get corporate. So you also get the AGUP, like the pension fund, but the ultimate goal is that it's a company that's too small to have its own dedicated fund that's pooling its money with one asset manager or maybe other smaller. If you have a collection of like 1,000 small companies or 100 small companies, like 1,000 employees each, they all will be invested on like one umbrella fund and they sort of make up like that same kind of thing.
Almost the same time.
Yeah. Okay. And then surplus money.
Tax or untaxed?
Yeah. So the main question that you ask yourself is, has the money been taxed? Oh, that sucks.
You're supposed to put that dollars in to save space.
I was thinking the exact same.
Also, I don't want this big gap here. But yeah.
Has been taxed?
Okay, so I think it's appropriate to put taxed in red because non-minus taxes.
No.
Are you okay with
If I
that?
could get my taxes back, I would, or I'd be rich.
I don't even mind paying taxes if I realize my taxes.
Yeah, that's actually true.
When you've got the highest public sector wage expenditure in our lovely country, you're not going to see much of it.
Like the Scandinavian countries, I mean, if you think our tax is bad, those will pay like 60% tax.
Mm.
They'll gladly pay their tax.
I don't have to replace their car suspension and tires every 2 years.
I mean, those are like some of the best countries to live in because the taxes are used to actually benefit. But just again, that's macroeconomics on a whole other scale. But anyway, cool. So we're gonna ask ourselves, has money been taxed, right?
Mr. Smith, Mr. S is a 64-year-old employee of Capitec who has just resigned. Can I get another color?
Yeah. You did it.
I'm a visual. No, I'm not gonna answer with it. That was just for answering the question. So Mr. Smith is a 64-year-old
Mm-hmm.
employee of Capitec who has just resigned, right? The RFA at Capitec is 65. So that's the age. What is it? Real? Huh?
Retirement fund age.
Okay. This is the. Can I do this to this? Oh. This is the real retirement. This is the retirement age, basically. Mr. Smith continues working on contract basis till 70. And then there is a 5 years difference. Right? After which he decides to transfer to the AGPE, which is the pension preservation. Right? Using the timeline, is this a pre or post retirement transfer? We had this question. So, since he continued working for Capitec and he did not resign, that's not the first thing, one of the factors. And also, considering that the retirement age is 65, but he only resigned at 70, we would call it, huh? Yes.
He resigned at 64.
He worked as a contractor from 64 to 70.
He's a 64-year-old. He resigned at 64, which doesn't count like that. And then here, they can resign at 65, or the resign age is 65.
Age, 65.
Yes, and then continues working on a contract basis until, okay, he resigned when he was 70, and then the resigning age is 65. We'll call it post. We'll call it pre.
Draw the timeline and nothing.
Okay. 65, right? And then this will be pre, and then this will be post. But since he continued working,
When did he resign?
he resigned at 70. But we'll still call it pre. Yeah.
But why? Why is it pre and not post?
I think it's because like the actual retirement was before. The actual retirement was before this.
When did he retire at?
He retired, he basically,
Or why, when did he resign?
he resigned at 64, but
Yeah.
he still continued to work until 70, but he's resigning, he's paid up what was at 64.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So even though he continued working, he was on a contract basis,
Mm-hmm.
but he technically resigned at the age of 64, so he left the Capitec pension fund at 64.
Okay,
So he worked
but,
until he was 70, which is past the retirement age of 65, but it still counts as a pre-retirement transfer because he technically left the fund before the fund retirement age.
so if you continued actually working up until 70
Yeah, it
on
doesn't
this
matter.
basis, then he was going to be post.
No, if he continued working until 70, but it's not post because he's working as a contract.
No, I mean on the normal part.
Yeah. If he hadn't resigned at 64.
That's all.
Cool. Correct. Yeah. There was a bit confusion. I can see this is where we're
Yeah.
with other consultants. That's perfectly fine. Stronger comes at the end as well. So yeah, he at the age of 64, which is before the retirement age of the fund, he resigned, right? That automatically puts him at a pre-retirement fund, retirement age transfer, right? Even though he continued working on a contract basis, he was technically resigned and paid up before. And so-
65.
yeah, and so at the age of 70, he decides to move his stuff to Allen Gray. He's still entitled to a pre-retirement withdrawal because of this factor over here.
So is it about when the premium was paid out?
Yeah, not when they transfer the money. Or even when they stop work, which is when they technically resign.
Okay.
Okay, very well done.
They'll stop appearing as an employee and start appearing as a contractor.
Eckhart, you're up.
Yes, alright. In October 2023, you finalized a Section 14 transfer from the Liberty Pension Fund to the Allan Gray Pension Preservation Fund. Now, Liberty sends you an additional amount of money following the transfer. Explain how you will handle this. Okay. Liberty sends you an additional amount of money following the transfer. Explain how you will handle this. Okay, so the first question is we call up the fund. Try to find out, are these monies taxed or untaxed? If the monies are taxed, we want to send it back. We want to send it back to them because these are voluntary monies, and we cannot invest voluntary monies on top of a preservation, on top of any preservation accounts. If the monies are untaxed, then we will have to determine what they are related to, and then we can either send them back to the transferring fund and they can pay them out to the client as being untaxed, or they can be invested on top of the original transfer amount, which is and they will take the form of surplus or interest. I think that's that.
You need to write it down. But yeah, the big question is it taxed or not? If it is taxed, voluntary money we can't invest in the pension fund. If it's untaxed, we can, or if the client wants it to be paid out to them, send it back to Liberty, for them to tax it and then pay to the client. That's the done. Last but not least,
You know.
Chair even.
Mr. Chair currently works for Toyota. He has AGPE 12783, preserving his pension fund, preserving from his pension his time at BMW.
Sorry, Chair, what happened to your handwriting here?
He
my shoulders
holds
big.
instructions of transferring his Toyota pension fund to AG, given that he's still in the motor vehicle industry. Your information to him is he can't transfer it into an existing one, we'll open another one.
It's like you're dealing with an actual client and you're like, that must stop. We will not
like,
have
he's
it.
still in the motor industry, but we can't top up your existing AGPE. You can only just open a new one.
If he asks why, what do you tell him?
Please call into our client service. No provident fund, we can only accept payment once. We can't add any additional contributions to a preservation fund.
From another source.
Yeah, so you can only add once. You can withdraw, but you can only add once. No other additional contributions. We will start a new one, and yeah, we'll just go separately.
Correct. Also because the whole point of the pension preservation fund is to preserve the money as well as like the rights that might be attached to it. And each transfer, much like with an F&B example, might have its own different protection, or we call it per account. So even though he's in the same industry and the source fund might be a car company, it's not the same, so we can't do it. Okay.
I'll be coming in on the teams from the CSC person.
Like, hey, please help me with your son, what's what? But why? And they ask you why. CCC. Ceci will ask you why, and you like,